The apartment still smelled like him. That was the part nobody warned Jessica about. They told her she would cry. They told her she would feel lost. They told her the nights would be the worst. But nobody mentioned that 2 days after signing divorce papers, she would still smell his cologne on the couch pillows, still find his protein powder under the kitchen sink, still step on one of his guitar picks near the bathroom door. 2 days. That was how long Jessica Grant had been officially unmarried. She sat on the floor of what used to be their living room. Half the furniture was gone. Derek had come with a moving truck the morning after the papers were signed, efficient as always, and stripped the place of everything he wanted: the leather sectional, the mounted television, the dining table they had picked out together on their 3rd anniversary. He left the bed, which was generous of him if you thought about it in the most twisted way possible. He left the bed where he had slept beside her while texting another woman. Jessica sat cross-legged on the carpet in a pair of old sweatpants and a red hoodie, her hair pulled back, her phone face down on the floor beside her. She had already made the mistake of looking at it once today. That was enough. Derek had posted a photo on his social media at 11:47 that morning. He was standing on a rooftop somewhere downtown, a glass of champagne in his hand, the skyline behind him. He wore a new suit. His smile was wide and easy. And standing beside him, her arm looped through his, was Tanya Mercer. The caption read, "New chapter, new energy. Blessed." Blessed. The man had filed for divorce 6 weeks ago. He had sat across from Jessica at a conference table with 2 lawyers present and told her calmly that the marriage was over, that they had grown apart, that he needed space to become his best self. Those were his words, his best self. Jessica had not argued. She had not screamed or thrown anything. She sat in her blue blouse and gray slacks and listened to her husband of 8 years explain why he no longer wanted her, and she signed every document his lawyer placed in front of her. She signed because she was tired. She signed because the fight had already been beaten out of her months before, back when she first found the text messages, back when he told her she was being paranoid, back when he made her feel crazy for knowing exactly what she saw. Now he was posting champagne photos with the woman he swore was just a colleague. Jessica pressed her palms against the carpet and exhaled slowly. The apartment was quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, the evening traffic crawled along the boulevard, and she could hear the distant honk of a delivery truck. She tried to think of what to do next. Not with her life, not with her future. Just with the next hour. Should she eat something? Should she shower? Should she call Simone? Her best friend had called 4 times today. Jessica had responded to one call, said she was fine, and hung up before her voice could break. She was not fine, but she was breathing, and right now breathing felt like enough. The knock came at 6:14 p.m. It was not a loud knock, not aggressive. 3 steady taps, evenly spaced, like the person on the other side had rehearsed it. Jessica did not move at first. She stared at the door from across the room and considered ignoring it. It could be a neighbor. It could be the building manager about the broken hallway light. It could be Simone, who had threatened more than once to show up unannounced. 3 more taps. Same rhythm. Patient. Jessica stood slowly. She wiped her palms on her sweatpants and walked to the door. She looked through the peephole and froze. Caleb Patterson was standing in the hallway. Derek's younger brother. 5 years younger, to be exact. Caleb had the same jawline as Derek, but softer features. Where Derek was broad and loud, Caleb was lean and quiet. He worked as a financial analyst at a firm downtown, and in the 8 years of Jessica's marriage, she could probably count the number of full conversations she had with him on 2 hands. He came to Thanksgiving. He came to the occasional birthday dinner. He was polite, a little reserved, and always the first to help clear the dishes. He had never once shown up at her door alone. Jessica opened it slowly. Caleb stood there in a gray button-down, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He was holding a thick manila envelope in both hands. He looked tired. Not the kind of tired from a long day. The kind of tired that comes from carrying something heavy for too long. "Jessica," he said, "I know this is. I know you probably don't want to see anyone from my family right now, and I understand that." She said nothing. She just stood there in the doorway, one hand on the frame. Caleb looked down at the envelope, then back at her. He took a breath. I need you to look at something, and when you do, you are going to understand why I'm here. And you are going to understand why my brother was so eager to finalize that divorce before you had time to think." Jessica glanced at the envelope. It was thick, maybe 30 or 40 pages inside. The edges were crisp, like it had been freshly printed. "What is that?" she said. Her voice was flat. Not curious, not angry, just flat. Caleb held it out to her. "This is every asset my brother hid from you during the divorce proceedings. Properties you don't know about, accounts you were never told existed, business revenue that was moved through a shell company 2 months before he filed." The hallway was silent. Somewhere on another floor, a door closed. "He didn't just leave you, Jessica," Caleb said. "He robbed you." She stared at him. Her hand tightened on the doorframe. "Why are you telling me this?" she said. Caleb lowered his hand slightly, the envelope still extended toward her. His expression didn't change, but something in his voice shifted. It got quieter, more deliberate. "Because I watched you hold that family together for 8 years. I watched you cook for every holiday, support every business idea, show up to every event with a smile even when I could tell you were exhausted. I sat at that Thanksgiving table last year and watched my brother take a phone call in the other room for 40 minutes, and I watched you pretend it didn't bother you." He paused. "My brother doesn't deserve your kindness. He never did. And he sure as hell doesn't deserve to walk away with everything you helped build while you sit here with nothing." Jessica looked at the envelope for a long moment. Then she stepped back from the door. "Come in," she said. Caleb walked inside. He looked around at the half-empty apartment, at the bare walls where photos used to hang, at the indentation marks on the carpet where the furniture had been. He didn't say anything about it. He just set the envelope down on the kitchen counter and stood quietly, waiting. Jessica closed the door behind him. She stood in her own apartment, in her red hoodie and old sweatpants, and felt something she had not felt in months. It was not sadness. It was not exhaustion. It was clarity. She picked up the envelope. Jessica met Derek Patterson when she was 24 years old. She was working as a junior assistant at a small interior design firm in the city, earning barely enough to cover rent and student loans. She had graduated with a degree in design from Howard University, full of ideas and ambition, but the industry was competitive. And the firm she worked for mostly had her organizing fabric samples and scheduling client meetings. She wanted to create spaces. Instead, she was answering phones. Derek walked into the firm one afternoon to meet with her boss about the lobby redesign of a building his company had just purchased. He was 27, confident, clean-shaven, wearing a tailored Navy suit. He carried himself like a man who expected doors to open for him, and they usually did. He was already making a name for himself in commercial real estate, flipping small office spaces and retail buildings around the metro area. He was hungry and ambitious, and he looked at Jessica like she was the most interesting person in the room. He asked her to dinner that same week. She said no at first. She didn't date clients, even if technically he was her boss's client, not hers. But Derek was persistent in that way some men are when they've decided they want something. He showed up with coffee the next morning. He sent her a message that was funny without being pushy. He waited. She said yes on the third ask. Their first date was at a small Italian restaurant near the waterfront. He ordered for both of them without asking, which annoyed her, but the food was good and the conversation was better. He asked her about design, really asked, not the polite surface-level questions most people offered. He wanted to know what drew her to it, what she would create if money and time were no issue, what her dream project looked like. Jessica told him about her vision of starting her own firm one day, a boutique practice that focused on residential redesigns for families going through life transitions. New homes, new beginnings, spaces that reflected who people were becoming rather than who they used to be. She had sketches in a notebook at home. She had a business plan half written on her laptop. Derek leaned across the table and said, "You should do it." 3 words. They landed somewhere deep inside her chest and stayed. They dated for a year and a half before he proposed. The wedding was small, held in a garden venue outside the city. Jessica wore a white gown with a cathedral train. Simone was her maid of honor and cried through the entire ceremony. Derek's family filled the groom's side, and Caleb sat in the second row, quiet and smiling. The first 2 years of the marriage were good. Genuinely good. Derek was building his real estate portfolio, and Jessica helped him every step of the way. She designed the model units for his first apartment renovation, choosing the paint colors, the fixtures, the staging furniture. She created the look that helped sell those units above asking price. She worked weekends without being asked. She skipped her own projects to support his. When Derek needed a down payment for a second property and came up short, Jessica emptied her savings account, $14,000, every penny she had set aside since college. She handed it over because she believed in the partnership, in them. Derek never paid it back. He never mentioned it again. By year 3, the business was growing, and so was the distance between them. Derek started working later, then traveling more, then checking his phone under the dinner table when he thought she wasn't looking. Jessica told herself it was the stress of expansion. She told herself that all marriages had seasons, and this was just a dry one. She stopped sketching in her notebook. She stopped updating her business plan. There was no time. There was always something Derek needed, something the business required, some event she had to attend on his arm wearing the right outfit and the right smile. Simone noticed before Jessica did. "When was the last time you did something for yourself?" Simone asked one evening over the phone. Jessica couldn't answer. By year 5, the marriage had settled into a routine that felt more like a schedule than a relationship. Derek came home, ate dinner, watched television, went to bed. Some nights, he didn't come home at all. "Business dinners," he said, "client meetings that ran late." Jessica stopped asking questions because the answers always made her feel small. The first real crack came on a Tuesday night in November, year 6. Derek left his phone on the bathroom counter while he showered. Jessica picked it up to move it away from the water, and the screen lit up with a notification. A text message from someone saved as TM. "Last night was perfect. Can't wait to see you again." Jessica stood in that bathroom holding his phone and felt the floor tilt under her. She read the message 3 times. Then she set the phone back down in the exact same position and walked out of the room. She didn't say anything that night. She climbed into bed beside Derek and stared at the ceiling until 3 a.m., replaying every late night, every unexplained absence, every moment she had chosen trust over instinct. 2 days later, she brought it up. She kept her voice calm. She told him what she saw. She asked him directly, "Who is TM?" Derek's reaction was immediate and practiced. He laughed, actually laughed. Then he told her TM was a contractor named Thomas Mitchell who was working on one of his renovation projects. He said the message was about a site visit that went well. He said Jessica was reading things that weren't there. He said she was being insecure. He said maybe she needed to talk to someone about her anxiety. He turned it around so fast that Jessica found herself apologizing. She apologized to the man who was cheating on her. She said she was sorry for not trusting him. That night, she lay in bed and hated herself for it. The next 18 months were a slow erosion. Jessica started watching. Not obsessively, not dramatically. She just paid attention. She noticed that Derek now took his phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. She noticed new charges on their joint credit card for restaurants she had never been to. She noticed that he started going to the gym more often, buying new cologne, getting haircuts every 2 weeks instead of every month. She noticed, and she said nothing. The final discovery came on a Saturday afternoon in March, year 8. Derek was in the shower, and his laptop was open on the kitchen island. A notification dropped down from his email. A confirmation for a hotel reservation. 1 room, 2 nights. The name on the reservation was his, and the second guest listed was Tanya Mercer. Jessica did not cry. She did not scream. She stood in the kitchen of the home she had helped build and felt something inside her go very still, like a candle flame in a room where all the windows had just closed. She screenshot the confirmation. She sent it to her own phone. Then she closed the laptop and went for a walk. When Derek came out of the shower, she was sitting at the kitchen table, calm and composed, wearing her green blouse and jeans. "We need to talk," she said. Derek sat down. She showed him the screenshot. She watched the color drain from his face, and then she watched as he rearranged it back, piece by piece, into something that almost looked like confidence. "Fine," he said. "Fine. You want the truth?" "Yes. I've been seeing someone." And honestly, Jessica, maybe that should tell you something about where this marriage is." He blamed her. Even in confession, he found a way to make it her fault. Jessica stood up, walked to the bedroom, and started packing a bag. 6 weeks later, the divorce papers arrived. Derek filed first. That was important, not because of some legal advantage, but because it set the tone. He filed first, which meant he had a lawyer before Jessica even had time to process what was happening. He had a strategy before she had a clear thought. The lawyer Derek hired was a man named Victor Rhodes. Jessica met him once at the first and only mediation session, and she understood immediately why Derek had chosen him. Rhodes was fast-talking, aggressive, and treated the process like a transaction to be completed as efficiently as possible. He spoke in numbers and percentages. He pushed timelines. He had documents ready before Jessica had even found representation. Jessica's lawyer was a woman named Diane Jacobs, a solo practitioner recommended by a coworker. Diane was competent but overloaded. She had 30 other clients, and Jessica's case was relatively straightforward on paper. Married 8 years, no children, shared property, community assets. The standard formula applied. Except it didn't, because Derek had spent the 6 months leading up to the filing quietly restructuring his business finances in ways that Jessica knew nothing about. She didn't know that at the time. She only found that out later. What Jessica knew during the divorce was this: she was exhausted. She was humiliated. She had spent 8 years building a life with a man who had thrown it away for someone named Tanya Mercer, and now he wanted to divide everything up in a conference room with fluorescent lighting and bad coffee while his lawyer handed her documents with yellow tabs marking where she should sign. The settlement offer was presented 3 weeks after filing. Derek would keep the house, which was in his name. He would keep the primary business entity and its assets. Jessica would receive a lump sum of $42,000, the car she was already driving, and release from the joint credit card debt. Diane reviewed the offer and told Jessica it was low. She said they could push back. She said there were grounds to negotiate, especially given the length of the marriage and Jessica's contributions to the business. Jessica sat in Diane's small office and stared at the wall. She thought about the months of legal back and forth that negotiation would require. She thought about sitting across from Derek again and again and again. She thought about the hotel reservation with Tanya's name on it. "I just want it to be over," she said. Diane looked at her for a long moment. Then she nodded and processed the agreement. The papers were signed on a Wednesday morning. Derek showed up in a charcoal suit, looking relaxed. He smiled at the receptionist. He shook his lawyer's hand. He signed each document with a smooth, practiced signature and slid them across the table without looking at Jessica. She signed in silence. Her pen pressed too hard on the last page, leaving an indent on the paper beneath it. When it was done, Derek stood, buttoned his jacket, and said, "I hope we can both move forward." Then he walked out of the room. He didn't look back. Jessica sat in that conference room for another 10 minutes after everyone else had left. Diane touched her shoulder and asked if she needed anything. Jessica shook her head. She drove home alone. She pulled into the parking garage of the apartment she now had by herself, turned off the engine, and sat in the dark car for 20 minutes. $42,000. That was the value of 8 years. 8 years of cooking, supporting, designing, sacrificing, believing, staying, forgiving, and trying. $42,000 and a Honda Accord with 70,000 miles on it. The worst part was not the money. The worst part was how fast it happened. 6 weeks from filing to final signature. Derek had engineered the entire thing to move at a speed that didn't give Jessica time to question, investigate, or think clearly. And she had let it happen because she was too tired to fight a man who had already proven he didn't care. The day after the signing, Derek was already posting on social media photos of the house, cleaned and redecorated, with new furniture in the spaces where their old life used to be. A photo of him at a restaurant she recognized, a new suit, a new watch. By the second day, the photo with Tanya appeared. Rooftop, champagne, new chapter, new energy, blessed. Jessica saw it because Simone sent it to her in a text with a string of angry emojis and the message, "I swear I could scream." Jessica didn't respond. She set her phone on the counter and stood in the kitchen, alone, surrounded by the absence of everything she used to have. She made herself a cup of tea. She sat at the small table that was left, the one Derek hadn't wanted because it was too small for entertaining. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup and tried to figure out how she had ended up here. 32 years old, divorced, almost broke, living in a half-empty apartment. The career she wanted had been on pause for 8 years. The man she trusted had lied to her face, taken her money, used her work, and walked away grinning. And now he was drinking champagne with another woman while Jessica sat alone with a cup of green tea and $42,000 to her name. She allowed herself exactly 15 minutes to feel the full weight of it, the sadness, the anger, the disbelief. She sat with all of it, eyes open, hands steady. Then she took a breath and stood up. She washed the cup, she dried it, she put it back in the cabinet. And then the knock came. 3 taps, steady, patient. The sound that changed everything. Caleb sat at the kitchen table, the one Derek didn't want, and spread the contents of the envelope across its surface like a man laying out evidence at trial, which, Jessica would later learn, was essentially what he was doing. "I need you to understand something before we go through this," Caleb said. He spoke carefully, like each word had been weighed before he let it out. "I'm not here to cause family drama. I'm not here because I have some problem with my brother. I'm here because what he did to you is wrong. And I have the proof." Jessica stood across from him, arms crossed, still in her red hoodie. She looked at the papers fanned across the table but didn't touch them yet. "How long have you known?" she said. Caleb looked her in the eye. "I started suspecting about 4 months ago. Derek asked me for help with some financial projections for what he called a new investment group. He sent me access to some accounts and spreadsheets. What I saw didn't match what I knew about his declared business holdings. So I dug deeper, quietly." He pointed to the first set of documents. "This is a shell company called Ridgeline Holdings LLC. It was created 11 months ago. The registered agent is a lawyer in Delaware, not Derek's usual attorney. But the operating agreement, which I obtained through public filings, lists Derek as the sole managing member." Jessica pulled out a chair and sat down. "Ridgeline Holdings owns 2 commercial properties," Caleb continued. He placed printouts of property records on the table. "One is a retail strip on Franklin Avenue. The other is a warehouse space near the industrial corridor. Combined, these properties are worth approximately $640,000. Jessica stared at the numbers. He never mentioned these. He wouldn't. They were purchased and transferred into the LLC specifically to keep them off the marital asset sheet during the divorce. The transfer dates line up exactly with the period when he was preparing to file." Caleb pulled out a second stack. "This is worse. I found a brokerage account under another entity, this one called Pinnacle Capital Group. Also, a Delaware registration. It holds just under $300,000 in investments, stocks, bonds, and a money market fund." Jessica's hands went flat against the table. $300,000, roughly. And it's been funded over the past 18 months with transfers from the main business account. Small amounts at first, $10,000 here, $15,000 there. Always just under the threshold that would trigger automatic flagging. He was methodical about it. The kitchen felt smaller than it had 5 minutes ago. The hum of the refrigerator seemed louder. "There's one more thing," Caleb said. His voice dropped slightly. "The main business, Patterson Property Group. When Derek disclosed its value during the divorce, he reported revenue of just over $200,000 for the year. But I cross-referenced his filings with some public data, lease records, and a few things I could access through my firm's database." He placed a final sheet on the table. His actual revenue was closer to $580,000. Jessica leaned back in her chair. She pressed her fingers against her temples and closed her eyes. "So when I sat in that conference room," she said slowly, "and his lawyer handed me a settlement for $42,000. You were being given a fraction of what you were legally owed." Derek undervalued his business, hid 2 properties, and moved nearly $300,000 into accounts that were never disclosed during discovery. The total hidden assets are somewhere north of $1 million. $1 million. Jessica opened her eyes and looked at the papers. Each one was clean, organized, annotated in Caleb's neat handwriting. He had done this carefully, thoroughly. This was not a rash decision or a moment of guilt. He had spent weeks building this file. "Why you?" she asked. "Why are you the one doing this?" Caleb sat still for a moment. He looked at his hands, then at Jessica. "My mother raised us to be honest. That was the one thing she always said. Whatever else you do, be honest. Derek forgot that somewhere along the way. I don't know when and I don't know why, but I can't sit at Thanksgiving this year and look at my brother across the table knowing what I know, and I definitely can't look at myself." He paused. "You spent 8 years in our family, Jessica. You were good to us. You were good to him. And he repaid that by lying to your face and hiding money that was half yours. I'm not going to be part of that." Jessica looked at the documents again. Her mind was starting to move. Not emotionally, not reactively, mechanically. Like gears that had been stuck for months were now slowly beginning to turn. "If I take this to a lawyer," she said, "what happens?" "You petition the court to reopen the divorce settlement based on fraudulent non-disclosure of assets. Under state law, a settlement can be vacated if one party deliberately concealed material assets. And with this evidence, there's no question that he did. He'll know it came from you." Caleb nodded. "I know." "And you're okay with that?" He met her eyes. "I made my peace with it before I printed the first page." Jessica sat with that for a long time. The apartment was quiet, except for the refrigerator and the traffic outside. She looked at the stack of papers, at the neat columns of numbers, at the property records and corporate filings that told the story of a man who had spent months hiding his wealth from the woman who helped him build it. She thought about the champagne photo, the rooftop, the new suit, blessed. She thought about the empty spaces on the walls where their photos used to hang. She thought about the $14,000 she gave him when he needed a down payment years ago, the savings account she emptied because she believed in them. Then she gathered the papers neatly, tapped them into a clean stack, and slid them back into the envelope. "I need a better lawyer," she said. Caleb reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. "Leonard Whitfield. He specializes in contested divorce settlements and financial fraud. He has a 92% success rate in asset recovery cases. I called his office yesterday. He can meet you Thursday." Jessica took the card. She looked at it, then at Caleb. "Thank you," she said. The words felt small, too small for what he had just done. But they were all she had right now. Caleb stood and picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. He paused at the door. "My brother was happy after the divorce," he said quietly. "Don't let him stay that way." Then he was gone, and Jessica was alone in her apartment with $1 million envelope and the beginning of something she hadn't felt in years. A plan. Leonard Whitfield's office was on the 9th floor of a glass tower in the financial district. The waiting room had leather chairs, framed degrees, and a receptionist who offered Jessica sparkling water without being asked. It was the kind of office that told you, before anyone said a word, that the people here did not lose. Jessica arrived 15 minutes early on Thursday morning. She wore a fitted maroon blazer she had found in the back of her closet, one she hadn't worn in years. She paired it with dark jeans and gold earrings. Simone had helped her get ready that morning, standing in Jessica's bathroom doorway with a cup of coffee and a look that said, "Go get what's yours." Simone had received a full briefing the night before. Jessica had called her after Caleb left and told her everything, every document, every number, every hidden property and concealed account. Simone had been silent for a long time, which was unusual for her. Then she said very calmly, "I always knew that man was garbage, but this is a whole landfill." Now Jessica sat in the waiting room with the manila envelope on her lap, and her heart beating steady and firm. Leonard Whitfield appeared at exactly 10 a.m. He was a tall man in his mid-50s, with close-cropped gray hair and reading glasses perched on his forehead. He wore a navy suit, no tie, and his handshake was the kind that communicated both warmth and competence in a single grip. "Miss Grant," he said, "come on in." His office was large and neat. Bookshelves lined one wall. A mahogany desk sat in the center, and behind it, a wide window showed the city skyline bright and clear under a midday sun. Jessica sat across from him and placed the envelope on his desk. "My ex-husband hid over $1 million in assets during our divorce proceedings," she said. "I have the documentation. I want it reopened." Whitfield raised an eyebrow. Then he opened the envelope and began reading. He read for a long time. He did not rush. He turned each page slowly, occasionally making a small note in the margin with a silver pen. Jessica sat in silence and let him work. After 20 minutes, he set the papers down and removed his reading glasses. "Who put this together?" he asked. "Someone who knows financial systems very well." Whitfield nodded. "This is thorough. The shell companies, the property transfers, the understated revenue. It's textbook asset concealment, and frankly, it's not even subtle. Your ex-husband assumed no one would look. Can you reopen the case? Under State Statute 14-7B, a divorce settlement can be vacated within 1 year of finalization if there's clear and convincing evidence that one party committed fraud by concealing material assets. Miss Grant, you don't just have clear and convincing evidence. You have a paper trail that leads straight to your ex-husband's front door." Jessica felt her shoulders drop. She hadn't realized how tense she had been. "Here is what I propose," Whitfield continued. "We file a motion to vacate the settlement and reopen the property division. We present this evidence in court, and we request not only the equitable distribution you were originally owed, but also damages for fraudulent concealment. In cases like this, judges often award the injured party a greater share than the standard 50%, sometimes 60 or even 70% of the hidden assets, as a penalty for the deception. How long will it take? If we move quickly, the initial hearing could be scheduled within 4 to 6 weeks. Full resolution, assuming he doesn't settle beforehand, maybe 3 to 4 months." "He won't settle," Jessica said. "He's too proud." Whitfield smiled. It was the kind of smile that suggested he had seen a lot of proud men in that chair across the courtroom. "Then we go to trial. And with this evidence, Miss Grant, we win." Jessica hired him that afternoon. She signed the retainer agreement, provided copies of all documents, and walked out of his office into the sunlight feeling something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Direction. She called Simone from the car. "It's happening," she said. "We filed the motion." "Good," Simone said. "Now what are you doing for the rest of the day?" Jessica paused. She looked at the dashboard clock. It was barely noon. "I don't know." "Yes, you do. You're going to start doing the thing you put on hold for 8 years. Jessica thought about the notebook in her nightstand drawer, the one with the sketches, the one with the half-written business plan. "It's been so long," she said. "So what? You still have the talent, you still have the eye. The only thing you lost was time, and that man doesn't get to take any more of it." That evening, Jessica pulled the notebook out of the drawer. She sat at the small kitchen table and opened it for the first time in 4 years. The pages were slightly yellowed. Her handwriting looked younger, more hopeful, but the ideas were still good. The concepts were still solid. The vision of a boutique design firm that helped people build spaces for new chapters of their lives, it was still there, waiting. She opened her laptop and started researching what it would take to get a business license. She looked up commercial lease rates for small office spaces. She made a list of contacts from her old firm who might be willing to refer clients. She worked until 2 a.m., and when she finally closed the laptop, her notebook had 6 new pages of notes. For the first time in months, she went to bed without dreading the morning. The next week moved quickly. Jessica threw herself into 2 things simultaneously, the legal case and her business. During the day, she worked with Whitfield's team, providing documentation, answering questions, and preparing her testimony. In the evenings, she worked on her design firm. She called it Jessica Grant Interiors, simple and direct. She designed a logo herself, clean lines in muted blue and white. She set up a basic website and an Instagram account where she posted photos of design concepts, mood boards, and before and after sketches. Simone helped her with the practical side. She had a cousin who ran a small printing company and offered to produce business cards at cost. She knew a woman at her hospital who had just bought a condo and needed it redesigned. "First client," she said, "right there." Jessica took the meeting. The condo was small, a 1-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, owned by a traveling nurse named Bridget who wanted something bright and comfortable to come home to after long shifts. The budget was modest, but Jessica didn't care about the money. She cared about the work. She walked through the condo taking measurements and photos. She asked Bridget about her life, her routines, what made her feel at ease. Then she went home and spent 3 days creating a design proposal that was so detailed and beautiful that Bridget cried when she saw it. "No one has ever put this much thought into how I live," Bridget said. Jessica smiled. "That's the whole point." The work had begun, and so had the next chapter. Jessica's days split into 2 tracks, and she moved between them with a focus she hadn't known she still had. Mornings belonged to the legal case. Whitfield's paralegal, a young woman named Renee, sent her emails every few days with updates, requests for additional documentation, or notes about the timeline. The motion to vacate the settlement had been filed. Derek had been notified through his attorney. A court date was being scheduled. Afternoons and evenings belonged to Jessica Grant Interiors. After Bridget's condo was completed, something small but significant happened. Bridget posted photos of the redesign on her social media. 3 of her coworkers reached out to Jessica within a week. One wanted a living room refresh. One wanted help designing a nursery. One just wanted a consultation, a conversation about how to make her apartment feel less like a storage unit and more like a home. Jessica took every call. She responded to every message within hours. She showed up to consultations in her blue wrap dress and carrying a leather portfolio she had bought at a thrift store and cleaned up until it looked expensive. She listened more than she talked, which was the thing that set her apart from the beginning. She didn't walk into someone's space and tell them what it should look like. She asked them what they needed it to feel like. By the end of the 2nd month after the divorce, she had 5 paying clients. The money was not life-changing yet, but it was steady. It was hers, and every dollar she earned felt different from the dollars she had spent during her marriage. Those had always come with an unspoken condition. A reminder that the business was Derek's, that the income was Derek's, that the life they lived was built on his work. Even though Jessica had been part of every deal, every staging, every late-night spreadsheet session. Now, when she deposited a check from a client, it had her name on it. Jessica Grant Interiors, no one else's. Simone noticed the change before Jessica did. "You're standing different," Simone said one afternoon. They were sitting in a coffee shop near Simone's hospital, splitting a sandwich between shifts. "What do you mean?" "You're standing up straighter. Your voice is louder. You're not apologizing before every sentence." Jessica thought about it. "I didn't realize I used to do that." "You did. Every time you spoke, it was like you were asking permission to have an opinion. That's gone now." Jessica looked at her coffee cup. She wasn't sure when it had changed, but she knew Simone was right. Something in her posture, in her voice, in the way she carried herself through a room had shifted. She was not pretending to be strong anymore. She just was. Meanwhile, Derek Patterson was living loud. Jessica didn't check his social media. She had unfollowed and blocked him the day after the champagne photo, but information had a way of finding people. Simone's sister worked at a catering company that had handled an event at Derek's house. Caleb mentioned, in a brief phone conversation about a document Whitfield needed, that Derek had just leased a new car. And one of Jessica's new clients, entirely by coincidence, mentioned that a real estate developer named Patterson was sponsoring a charity gala downtown next month. Derek was spending money like a man with nothing to worry about. New car, new events, new profile photos every week, always with Tanya beside him, always in some upscale location, always smiling. He had no idea what was coming. Jessica stayed quiet. Whitfield had told her early on that discretion was essential. "Don't tip him off," he said. "Let him keep spending. Let him keep posting. Every dollar he throws around and every public display of wealth becomes evidence that he has far more than he disclosed." So Jessica kept her head down and built. Her 6th client was the one that changed things. A woman named Cheryl Madden, who ran a boutique hotel group in the city, found Jessica through Bridget's original social media post. Cheryl was looking for a designer to help refresh 3 hotel lobbies and a rooftop lounge. It was a significant project with a real budget, the kind of work Jessica had dreamed about when she was 24 and sketching in her notebook. The meeting took place in Cheryl's downtown office, a bright space with floor-to-ceiling windows and fresh flowers on every surface. Jessica arrived in a green tailored blouse and cream trousers, her portfolio under her arm. She had spent 3 nights preparing for this meeting, not because she was nervous, but because she wanted the work to speak for itself. She presented 3 concept boards, one for each lobby. Clean, modern, inviting spaces with natural light, soft textiles, and local artwork. She talked about traffic flow, guest psychology, and how the first 30 seconds in a lobby shaped a guest's entire perception of their stay. She backed every design choice with a reason. Cheryl leaned back in her chair when Jessica finished and said, "When can you start?" The contract was for $52,000, more than Derek's entire divorce settlement had given her for a single project. Jessica signed the agreement in Cheryl's office, shook her hand, and walked out into the sunlight. She stood on the sidewalk and took a deep breath. The city was loud around her. Cars, people, construction, life. She looked up at the sky, clear and bright, and felt the full weight of the moment. 6 months ago, she had been sitting on the floor of a half-empty apartment, wondering how to get through the next hour. Now she was standing on a sidewalk with a contract in her bag and a business that was hers. She called Simone. "I got the hotel project." Simone screamed so loud that Jessica had to hold the phone away from her ear. That night, Jessica went home and pulled out her notebook. She turned to a blank page and wrote 2 words at the top, "Next steps." Then she started planning. She was building something, and this time, no one was going to take it from her. Derek Patterson was having a Tuesday. That was how Jessica imagined it later, when she got the details from Whitfield. A regular Tuesday. Derek was in his office on the 3rd floor of a shared commercial building near the business district, probably reviewing lease agreements or scheduling property walkthroughs. His assistant was at the front desk. His coffee was probably still warm. At 2:15 p.m., a process server walked through the door, asked for Derek Patterson by name, handed him a sealed envelope and said, "You've been served." Inside the envelope was a motion to vacate the original divorce settlement, filed by Leonard Whitfield on behalf of Jessica Grant, citing fraudulent concealment of marital assets under State Statute 14-7B. The filing included Exhibits A through F, which detailed the existence of Ridgeline Holdings LLC, Pinnacle Capital Group, 2 undisclosed commercial properties, an undisclosed brokerage account, and a revenue discrepancy of approximately $380,000. Derek called Victor Rhodes, his divorce attorney, within 3 minutes. Rhodes called Whitfield within 10. And by the end of the day, Derek Patterson was no longer having a Tuesday. He was having a crisis. Jessica heard about it from Whitfield the next morning. "His attorney called my office at 4:40 p.m. yesterday," Whitfield said over the phone. Let's say he was energetic. "He accused us of filing a baseless motion, threatened sanctions, and said his client categorically denied any concealment." "And what did you say?" "I told him I looked forward to presenting Exhibits A through F to the judge." Rhodes requested a meeting. Whitfield declined. "I don't negotiate before a hearing," he told Jessica. "Let the evidence do the talking." The hearing was set for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, Jessica continued to work. She had started the hotel lobby project and was spending most of her days between site visits, vendor meetings, and design sessions in her small home office. She kept her phone nearby for updates from Whitfield, but she didn't obsess over the legal case. She had done what she could. Now it was in motion. The call from Caleb came on a Saturday morning. "He knows," Caleb said. His voice was flat, controlled. "Derek called me last night. He put it together." Jessica sat on the edge of her bed, her phone pressed to her ear. "What did he say?" "A lot of things, most of which I'm not going to repeat. He called me a traitor. He said I had no business going through his financial records. He said I had betrayed the family." "What did you say?" "I told him he betrayed you first, and that hiding assets from your wife in a divorce isn't a family matter, it's fraud." There was a pause. "He hung up on me," Caleb said. "My mother called me an hour later. She already knew. Derek told her everything, or at least his version of it. She listened to both sides. And she told Derek she didn't raise a thief." Jessica closed her eyes. Patricia Patterson, a church-going woman who had always been polite but reserved around Jessica, had just taken her side. Or rather, she had taken the side of truth. "I'm sorry this is happening to your family," Jessica said. "Don't be. Derek did this to our family, not you." The days that followed were tense in ways Jessica hadn't expected. Derek didn't contact her directly. Whitfield had made it clear that any communication should go through attorneys. But Derek was not a man who followed rules quietly. He showed up at her apartment building on a Wednesday evening. Jessica was coming home from a site visit, carrying fabric samples and a box of light fixtures for the hotel project. She wore her blue coat over a red top, and her arms were full. She saw Derek's car in the visitor parking spot before she saw him. He was standing near the entrance, hands in his pockets, jaw tight. He had lost weight. Not a lot, but enough that his suit jacket didn't quite fit the way it used to. Jessica. She stopped walking. The box shifted in her arms, and she adjusted her grip. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I know. I just need 5 minutes." "Talk to my lawyer." "I'm talking to you. 5 minutes. That's all." She looked at him. This man she had married. This man she had loved for 8 years. He looked smaller standing there in the parking garage than she remembered. Not physically, something else. "Fine. Talk." Derek took a breath. "What you're doing is going to ruin me. You understand that, right? The business, my reputation, everything I've built. If this goes to court and that evidence is presented publicly, every deal I'm working on falls apart. Every investor pulls out. My name gets dragged through the news. You hid over $1 million from me during our divorce. It's not that simple." "It is exactly that simple." He stepped closer. "Jessica, we can settle this privately. I'll increase the settlement, double it, triple it. We can handle this without a courtroom. You had 8 years to be honest with me. You had 6 weeks during the divorce to disclose your assets. You chose not to. And now you want to negotiate in a parking garage because you're scared." Derek's expression hardened. "Who gave you those documents? Was it Caleb?" "Talk to my lawyer, Derek." "Was it Caleb?" "This conversation is over." She shifted the box in her arms and walked past him toward the building entrance. He didn't follow. She heard his car start behind her as she pushed through the lobby door. Inside the elevator, her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline. From the strangeness of standing in front of a man who once had all the power in their relationship and realizing that the balance had completely shifted. She got to her apartment, set the box down, hung up her coat, and sat on the couch. She picked up her phone and texted Whitfield. "Derek showed up at my building, wanted to settle privately. I told him to contact you." Whitfield responded in 4 minutes. "Noted. I'll file a notice with the court. Do not engage with him again directly." She texted Simone. "He came to my apartment, tried to bargain." Simone responded immediately. "And what did you say?" Jessica typed, "I said no." Simone's reply was a single word, "Good." Jessica set her phone down, leaned back against the couch, and looked around her apartment. It was fuller now than it had been 2 months ago. She had added a new bookshelf, a small area rug in a soft cream tone, a reading lamp by the window. Her design portfolio was stacked on the desk, and fabric swatches were pinned to a corkboard above it. This was her space now, built by her, for her. She picked up her notebook and went back to work. The courtroom was smaller than Jessica expected. She had imagined something grand, like the ones in television dramas, with high ceilings and dark wood paneling and rows of spectators. Instead, it was a mid-sized room with fluorescent lighting, beige walls, and a judge's bench that looked like it had been installed sometime in the 1990s. But the evidence on the table in front of Leonard Whitfield was anything but small. The hearing took place on a Friday morning in mid-October. Jessica arrived early, wearing a tailored green dress and simple pearl earrings. Her hair was pulled back. Her hands were steady. She sat beside Whitfield at the petitioner's table, her back straight, her eyes forward. Derek arrived with Victor Rhodes and sat at the opposite table. He wore a dark blue suit and a striped tie, and his expression was carefully neutral. But Jessica could see the tightness around his jaw, and the way his fingers kept drumming the surface of the table. Judge Ruth Coleman took the bench at exactly 9:30 a.m. She was a woman in her late 60s, with short silver hair and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She had a reputation for being thorough, impatient with theatrics, and deeply unimpressed by lawyers who tried to substitute volume for substance. "We're here on the petitioner's motion to vacate the original divorce settlement in Grant v. Patterson, based on allegations of fraudulent asset concealment," she said. "Mr. Whitfield, you may proceed." Whitfield stood. He was calm in a way that came from decades of courtroom experience, not from any lack of intensity. He walked the judge through the case methodically. He started with Ridgeline Holdings, LLC. He presented the articles of incorporation filed in Delaware, the operating agreement listing Derek as sole managing member, and the property records showing 2 commercial buildings purchased and transferred into the LLC during the 6 months before the divorce filing. He showed the judge the original asset disclosure from the divorce proceedings, where neither the LLC nor the properties appeared. "Your Honor, this is not an oversight," Whitfield said. "These properties were deliberately excluded from the marital estate. The timing of the transfers, the use of a separate registered agent, the creation of a shell entity in a different state, all of this indicates a deliberate effort to conceal assets from the petitioner." He moved to Pinnacle Capital Group. He laid out the brokerage account statements, the transfer records from Patterson Property Group, and the timeline showing regular deposits over an 18-month period. Every transfer was just below the reporting threshold that would have triggered scrutiny. The respondent moved approximately $287,000 into this account over the course of a year and a half. Whitfield said, "None of this was disclosed. The petitioner had no knowledge of this account's existence." Then he addressed the revenue discrepancy. He presented the tax filings Derek had submitted during the divorce, showing annual business revenue of approximately $204,000. Beside them, he placed lease records, tenant payment histories, and market data showing that the actual revenue from Patterson Property Group was closer to $580,000. The respondent underreported his business income by nearly $380,000. Whitfield said, "This directly affected the calculation of the settlement offer, which the petitioner accepted in good faith, relying on the accuracy of the disclosure." Rhodes objected multiple times during the presentation. He argued that the shell companies were legitimate business structures, that the revenue discrepancies were due to accounting differences, that the brokerage account was a retirement planning vehicle and not a marital asset. Each time, Judge Coleman listened, asked a clarifying question, and allowed Whitfield to proceed. Then it was Jessica's turn. She took the witness stand. Whitfield asked her a series of straightforward questions. When did she learn about the hidden assets? What was disclosed to her during the divorce? What was the settlement she received? How had she contributed to the business during the marriage? Jessica answered each one directly. She described designing the model units that helped sell Derek's first renovated apartments. She described emptying her savings to fund his down payment. She described 8 years of work, partnership, and sacrifice, and a divorce that was finalized in 6 weeks with a settlement of $42,000. "Did your ex-husband ever disclose the existence of Ridgeline Holdings, Pinnacle Capital Group, or the true revenue of his business?" Whitfield asked. "No," Jessica said. "He did not." "Were you given any opportunity to review or question the financial disclosures during the divorce proceedings?" His lawyer pushed for a fast settlement. "I was told the numbers were accurate. I signed because I trusted the process." Judge Coleman made a note. When it was Rhodes's turn to cross-examine, he tried to paint Jessica as financially unsophisticated, implying that she should have done her own due diligence before signing the settlement. He asked if she had hired a forensic accountant. He asked if she had requested additional discovery. He asked if she had any financial training. Jessica looked at him and answered each question honestly. No, she had not hired a forensic accountant. No, she had not requested additional discovery. No, she did not have financial training. Because she had trusted her husband to be honest, and because his lawyer had pushed the process through at a pace designed to prevent exactly the kind of scrutiny that would have revealed the truth, Rhodes shifted uncomfortably. Derek did not take the stand. Rhodes advised him not to, which Whitfield later said was the smartest thing Rhodes did all day. If Derek had testified, Whitfield would have cross-examined him, and the documents would have done the rest. By noon, the hearing was over. Judge Coleman said she would review the evidence and issue a ruling within 2 weeks. She thanked both parties, stood, and left the bench. Jessica walked out of the courtroom with Whitfield beside her. The hallway was bright with overhead lights and the quiet footsteps of clerks moving between rooms. "How do you think it went?" she asked. Whitfield adjusted his glasses. "The evidence speaks clearly. Judge Coleman is methodical. She'll review everything. But I'll tell you this, Miss Grant. In 30 years of practice, I have never seen a stronger case for asset concealment. He left a trail a mile wide." Jessica nodded. She looked down the hallway toward the exit, where the sunlight poured in through the glass doors. "Now we wait," she said. "Now we wait." She drove home, changed into comfortable clothes, and sat at her desk. The hotel lobby designs were spread out before her, halfway through final revisions. She picked up her pencil and went back to work. There was nothing more she could do about the courtroom, but there was plenty she could do about her life. The ruling came on a Wednesday afternoon, 11 days after the hearing. Jessica was in the middle of a site visit at Cheryl Madden's hotel when her phone vibrated in her pocket. She was standing in the second-floor lobby, discussing lighting fixture placement with an electrician, when she felt the buzz. She excused herself, stepped into a quiet hallway, and looked at the screen. It was Whitfield. "Judge Coleman issued her ruling," he said. "Are you somewhere you can talk?" "Yes." "The motion to vacate has been granted. The original settlement is void." Jessica leaned against the hallway wall and pressed her free hand flat against the cool surface. She didn't speak for a moment. "The judge found clear and convincing evidence of fraudulent concealment," Whitfield continued. She cited the Ridgeline Holdings properties, the Pinnacle Capital account, and the revenue underreporting. She ruled that Derek Patterson deliberately misrepresented his financial position to secure an inequitable settlement. "What does the new settlement look like?" "The judge awarded you 65% of all previously undisclosed assets. That includes your share of both Ridgeline properties, 65% of the Pinnacle brokerage account, and a recalculated share of the business revenue based on the actual figures. She also awarded you the full amount of the original settlement on top of that, since the initial $42,000 was based on fraudulent numbers." Jessica closed her eyes. "What is the total?" "Once everything is liquidated and transferred, we're looking at approximately $780,000. $780,000. Jessica's knees softened. She didn't sit down, but she leaned harder against the wall. The hallway smelled like fresh paint and new carpet. Somewhere down the corridor, a contractor was running a drill. "Additionally," Whitfield said, "the judge imposed a penalty of $40,000 against Mr. Patterson for litigation misconduct, specifically for the deliberate concealment. That amount goes directly to you. So the total is over $800,000. Approximately $820,000 when you include the original settlement amount. His attorney has 15 days to begin the transfer process. If they don't comply, we go back to court for enforcement, and the penalties increase." Jessica opened her eyes. The hallway was still. The drill had stopped. "Thank you, Leonard. You did this, Miss Grant. The evidence was there because someone cared enough to find it, and you had the courage to bring it forward." She hung up and stood in that hallway for 3 full minutes, breathing, not crying, not laughing, just breathing, letting the numbers settle into something real. $820,000. Enough to pay off her debts, fund her business properly, secure a real office space, and build the kind of life she had been sketching in her notebook for over a decade. She called Simone. "It's done," she said. "We won." The sound Simone made could not be described in polite terms, but it was joyful and loud and lasted approximately 15 seconds. "How much?" Simone asked. $820,000. There was a long pause. Then Simone said very quietly, "Jessica, you deserve every single cent of that. Every single one." Jessica felt her throat tighten. She blinked hard and took a breath. "I know." "So what are you going to do now?" Jessica looked down the hallway toward the lobby she was redesigning. The lobby she had been hired to create. The work she had built with her own 2 hands. "I'm going to finish this hotel project," she said, "and then I'm going to grow my business. And I'm never going to let anyone make me feel small again." The fallout for Derek Patterson was swift and public. The court ruling was a matter of public record, and in the commercial real estate world, word traveled fast. Within a week, 2 of his business partners requested audits of their joint investments. Within 2 weeks, a major client pulled out of a development deal citing concerns about financial transparency. Within a month, Derek's name had become something people lowered their voices to say. His social media went quiet. The champagne photos disappeared. The rooftop celebrations stopped. The last post on his account, dated the day before the ruling, was a generic photo of a sunset with no caption. Tanya Mercer was the first to leave. Jessica didn't know the details and didn't want to. She heard from Caleb briefly that Tanya had moved out of Derek's house 2 weeks after the ruling. She packed her things on a Tuesday while he was at work, Caleb said, left a note on the kitchen counter. Jessica almost felt something. Almost. Then she thought about the champagne photo and the word blessed, and the feeling passed. Derek was alone now, in the house he had kept, with the furniture Jessica had not taken, surrounded by the things he had chosen over his marriage. Jessica received the first transfer from Derek's attorney on November 15th, $212,000 deposited into her account. The remaining amount would follow in structured payments over the next 3 months, as ordered by the court. She looked at the number in her bank account and remembered the number she had looked at after the original settlement, $42,000. That was what Derek thought she was worth. That was the number he had put on 8 years of her life. The court had given her a different number, a true number, one that reflected what she had contributed, what she had sacrificed, and what had been stolen from her. She closed the banking app and went to bed. The next morning, she woke up early, made coffee, and sat at her desk. She opened her notebook to a new page and wrote, Business Plan, Phase 2. The revenge was done, but the real work was just beginning. 6 months later, on a bright Saturday in April, Jessica Grant stood in the center of her new office and looked around. The space was on the 4th floor of a renovated building in the Arts District, a neighborhood she had always loved but could never afford. The office had exposed brick on one wall, polished concrete floors, and wide windows that let in so much natural light that she rarely needed to turn on the overhead fixtures. She had designed the interior herself, obviously. Soft blue accent walls, a large wooden desk near the window, a sample table in the center of the room where clients could touch and compare fabrics, tiles, and paint swatches, a small sitting area with 2 cream-colored chairs and a round coffee table. On the wall behind her desk in a simple frame was a copy of her business license, Jessica Grant Interiors, LLC, established 7 months ago, currently serving 12 active clients, including 3 hotels, a medical office, 2 restaurants, and 6 residential projects. Revenue in the first 6 months, $214,000. Jessica stood in the morning light wearing a cobalt blue dress and gold bracelet. Her hair was down, falling past her shoulders in loose curls. She looked rested. She looked strong. She looked like a woman who had walked through something terrible and come out on the other side with her name on a door. The hotel lobby project for Cheryl Madden had been completed in December. Cheryl was so pleased with the work that she referred Jessica to 2 other hotel owners in the region. One of them signed a contract for a full property refresh, the largest project Jessica had taken on yet. She hired her first employee, a junior designer named Kezia, fresh out of design school and full of energy. Kezia reminded Jessica of herself at 24, all ideas and notebooks and the kind of hunger that only comes from knowing exactly what you want to build. The business was growing, not overnight, not in some sudden dramatic way. It grew the way real things grow, steadily through work and consistency and a reputation that was earned one project at a time. Jessica had used the court settlement wisely. She paid off her student loans, she leased the office space. She invested in proper design software, a professional website, and the equipment she needed to take on commercial projects. She put a significant portion into a savings account that she did not touch. It sat there, a cushion, a safety net, a reminder that she would never again be in a position where one person's dishonesty could leave her with nothing. She still lived in the same apartment. She could have moved, could have rented something larger, something more impressive, but the apartment had become hers in a way that mattered. It was the place where Caleb had knocked on her door with the envelope, the place where she had opened her notebook for the first time in years, the place where she had started over. She would move eventually, when the time was right. For now, it felt like home. Simone remained her closest friend. They had lunch every Saturday at the same coffee shop near the hospital. Simone had started dating a pediatric surgeon named Owen. And she talked about him with the kind of cautious optimism that Jessica recognized from her own younger years. "I like him," Simone said once, "but I'm keeping my eyes open. Both of them." Jessica laughed, a real laugh, the kind she hadn't made in a long time. Caleb Patterson remained a steady presence. After the ruling, their contact had become more regular. Not daily, not constant, but consistent. He would text her every week or so, checking in. Sometimes about the case, sometimes about nothing in particular. He asked how the business was going. She asked about his work. They had dinner once at a casual restaurant near her office and spent 2 hours talking about their families, their careers, and the strangeness of the past year. Caleb never overstepped. He never made a move or said something that could be misread. He was exactly what Jessica needed, which was someone who showed up without wanting anything in return. One evening, after a particularly long day, Jessica texted him, "Thank you for all of it." He replied, "You did the hard part. I just dropped off an envelope." She smiled at her phone and set it down. Was there something between them? Jessica wasn't ready to answer that question. She wasn't ready to even ask it. Her life had just become her own again, and she was in no hurry to share it. If something was there, it would wait. Good things did. Derek Patterson's professional life continued to contract. He lost 2 more clients after the ruling became public knowledge. His business partner, a man named Gregory Holt, filed a separate audit request and discovered additional accounting irregularities, unrelated to the divorce, that led to a formal investigation by the state licensing board. Derek was not charged with anything criminal, but his real estate license was placed under review, and his ability to close new deals was severely limited. He sold one of the Ridgeline properties to cover his legal costs. He put the house on the market in January. Jessica saw the listing online by accident. She was browsing properties for a client's relocation, and the address came up in a search result. The house she had lived in for 6 years, the one with the kitchen she redesigned and the garden she planted, was listed at $490,000. The photos showed it empty, no furniture, no champagne, no Tanya. She closed the listing and moved on. On that Saturday morning in April, Jessica stood in her office and took a slow look around. The light was clean and bright. The city hummed outside the windows. Her phone buzzed with a notification, a new inquiry from a potential client who had seen her work on the hotel chain's website. She opened her laptop and began composing a response. The door to the office had a small placard beside it, brushed silver with black lettering, "Jessica Grant Interiors." Below it, in smaller text, "Design for New Beginnings." She had come up with that tagline late one night, sitting at the kitchen table in her apartment. The same table Derek hadn't wanted. The one that was too small for entertaining. The one where Caleb had laid out the evidence that changed her life. The one where she had rebuilt everything, one page at a time. Jessica Grant was 33 years old. She was the owner of a growing design firm. She was financially stable. She was surrounded by people who cared about her. She had a business that mattered, work that fulfilled her, and a future that she had built with her own hands. She was not waiting for anyone to save her. She was not hoping for someone to come back. She was not looking over her shoulder at the past. She was looking forward, through the wide, clean windows of her own office, into a morning that belonged entirely to her. And she was happy. Not the kind of happy that depends on someone else. Not the kind that can be taken away. The kind that comes from the inside, quiet and steady, like a light she had turned on herself. Derek Patterson was happy after the divorce. But Jessica Grant was happier, and she had earned every bit of it.